Tierlist here, coming at you with another One Piece video. And in today's One Piece video, guys, as you might be able to tell, we are doing a tier list video. We are going to be looking at every leader in OP05 and basically rating where I think they're going to be, how good they're going to be, if they're going to be really bad, if they're going to be the best deck of the format, or if they're going to be the worst deck of the format. And we're going to be talking about every single leader in this video to decide where they do deserve to be on this tier list that I have here that goes from S to F. And honestly, I just wanted to do this because obviously we did do an OP04 one, which was really fun to do, and I wanted to do it again for OP05 to give you guys an idea of what you should probably be playing in OP05 as well. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this tier list and just have fun with it. So hopefully you do enjoy, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more One Piece content after the video. Anyway guys, let's go ahead and get into it right now. So starting off, we have Blurple Croc. Now, last format I said this was going to be a pretty decent leader, and obviously that didn't happen. It didn't become great. It's got a very good leader ability in my personal opinion, where if you activate an event and it has one dot on it and you have like 4 or less cards in hand, you draw a card, which is pretty good when you think about it. Like, it gives you advantage, it gives you draws, which is really, really nice. But it doesn't really do everything that we would like it to do, right? Like, the blue cards are really strong. You get access to like Missile Sunday to add your events back from trash. You get access to all the new Baroque works that you got from OP04. But the deck didn't perform how I thought it would, and honestly, after that showing, I can be honest and go ahead and place him in a C tier spot. He is a decent leader, don't get me wrong, but he's not good enough in my opinion. Continuing on, next we have King, the Purple King. Now, last format I also did say this was an F tier leader. This leader was absolutely terrible, trash, unplayable. Now that we're in OP05 though, this leader actually becomes pretty decent. It goes from an F tier leader, in my personal opinion, to a C tier leader. Having access into the Kid, Onigashima, and everything else that Purple's going to be getting in OP05 really does just improve the style of this deck and makes it a lot better. So I personally feel like it's going to be a C tier deck. Plus, it has the good upkeep ability of being, if you're on 10 Don, all your opponent's characters lose 1k power. So those 6k blockers that were protecting your opponent's 5k leader, well, they instantly become easier to hit because you have 10 Don. So having access to Onigashima, having access to the 8-drop or 7-drop Kid, having access into every good purple card in the purple pool, I think is going to be pretty decent. It's not going to be absolutely insane. I don't think it goes above C tier, but it's going to be a pretty decent one. Next we have Purple Yellow Croc. This is a D tier. Like, this is not a great leader at all. Like, yes, it has a pretty interesting ability where if you do lose a Don on your opponent's turn, you get an active Don back. But let's be honest, guys, it doesn't really do much outside of that. Having the yellow side to it is really good, but let's be honest, having the yellow side with 4 life isn't really great. Also, having the purple side is pretty decent, but yeah, not going to be using a load of purple cards because you've got to mix it with other cards to kind of gain the ability to use the leader's effects. Like, the best yellow card, well, purple cards this card can be used with is stuff like Film Uto, which will go ahead and instantly give you a Don back, use it with Blast Breath, and pretty much those are only the cards that would be used, and all the Baroque Works card, obviously, but the Baroque Works cards work better in the Blurple Croc deck, in my opinion, so it's just not really worth it. So, honestly, Purple Yellow Croc, just not really worth it, in my opinion. D tier leader, not F tier by any stance, because the yellow does give it that ability to play if you were to play a yellow variant of it, but it isn't really amazing, so I'll put it in D tier personally. Next, we have Whitebeard, Edward Newgate. Now, as everybody knows, Edward Newgate gets all of the red support back in OP05. Today, the ban list was undone, and all the Marcos came back, all the Namis came back, all the Whitebeards came back, everything came back. So, I don't think it's really a debate to say Whitebeard, it's going to be an A tier deck. It's going to be a very strong deck. It's going to be a very good deck going forward. So I don't really think it's a debate to say, yeah, Whitebeard isn't the best leader, but it's definitely still going to be a strong leader. 6k leaders are still incredibly broken. He's going to have constant cards in hand, essentially drawing 2 cards every turn, and it's just going to be the same Whitebeard you saw through OP02 and OP03, which was the best deck in the game at the time. So, yep, definitely a deck that goes into A tier. Next, we have Red Black Garp, F tier. I don't know what Bandai were thinking when they mixed red and black, but honestly, in my opinion, this is the worst color combination. Red focuses on killing, power. Black focuses on killing cost. These two do not mix, and Garp, having the ability to decrease cost is really nice, but it doesn't really do enough for most of the time, especially since it can't decrease like high costing characters like Big Mom or Katakuri or Mihawk. Like, it doesn't really deal with these characters, and personally, I just don't think he's a good leader. He goes straight into F tier in my opinion. Until we get a better red-black leader that really does justify using it, I don't think it's worth going higher than F tier. So, yep, F tier in my opinion. Blue Dofi, I'm gonna be honest, I instantly put this in B tier. Until this deck gets slowed down by any means, I don't think it's going to be worse than B tier. Having the ability to play 4-cost characters from the top of your deck that are 5k power or 6k power is insanely strong. You're swinging for 7 every single turn. You have access into all the blue good cards such as 9-drop Mihawk, 10-drop Kaido, Red Rock, 3000 Worlds. Like, there's really no reason to justify not playing Dofi at times, and he's a very decent leader, but there's just better leaders than him right now, which is why I feel like he's B tier, but I feel like this is a justifiable place to put him. I don't think he'll ever drop into C tier right now, but currently at the moment, I think he is a B tier leader. Continuing on though, we have Kinemon. Now obviously in OP04.5, Kinemon did really well, winning some events, topping events, and just having a lot of fun as a green deck in general. Green still being one of the worst colors in the game until like OP06 is still unfortunate, but Kinemon is just one of those leaders that really does make green slightly faster, being able to play cards like Okiku and 5-cost Yamato really quick by like turn 1 and 2. So I feel like the deck is actually still pretty decent. Do I think it needs to go high? No, I don't think it would enter A. Definitely not S. Do I think it's a deck that deserves to be in C? Probably not. Personally, I would put this deck in B tier. Low B tier for sure. I don't think it's a super high B tier. I think it's just one of those decks that will always be somewhat decent and does deserve the recognition it gets, because being able to play, like, as I said, Okiku for 2-cost, 5-cost Yamato for 4-cost is really decent, and I feel like B tier is justifiable with this deck. I just really do. Next we have Sanji. Sanji is an F tier leader as well. Like, honestly, his ability isn't great, the color combination is decent, but it just doesn't do enough. And when you got something like Rosinante, which is the new green-blue leader coming out, it just really overshadows Sanji overall. And like, yes, he can restand Don, but he only does that on characters that don't have effects. So if you got a blocker character, you don't restand the Don. If you got a double attack character, you don't restand the Don. I feel like if it did do it under those conditions, it would be a lot better. But because it doesn't, it's an F tier leader. I don't like it. I don't think it's great. I have played it for fun at times, but I just don't think it goes above F tier. Next, we have Ivankov. I don't care what anyone says, it's F tier. Honestly, this leader, in my mind, yes, it has a decent effect. It has an end turn, draw 2. That's nice. But, like, generally, I don't think this leader's good. I've seen it do well in events. I feel like that was the player's skill more than the deck itself. And I just don't justify this deck being better than F tier. I think this deck is absolute garbage. And yeah, I'm putting it in F tier. I just don't think it's good. Next, we have Magellan, though. Now, Magellan did really good during OPO 4.5 as well, and got the support from ST10 too, making it slightly better than what it was. And personally, I don't think it's a deck that's going to be super powerful going into OPO 5. I think it's going to be decent, but I feel like it's going to be overshadowed by a lot of the red stuff coming back. So where do I essentially feel like this is going to go? Personally, I think this is going to go into the B tier, upper B tier for sure, because purple does get a lot better as time goes on, but right now, I think it's just upper B tier. I don't think it needs to go any higher, because it won't enter A tier, because a lot of the decks that were worse are now better again, so I feel like B is just decent. Next, we have Zeph. Zeph is an interesting one. Now, I personally think this is one that does have potential going forward, because obviously when attack, neg 4 Don, kill a character. Purple does revolve around cost killing, which is really good with black that can decrease cost. But personally, I don't think this is the best leader that it could have been for the purple-black color. So in my opinion, I think I'm gonna go ahead and put it in D tier. I don't think it deserves to be an F tier by any means, but I don't think it deserves to be higher than D tier right now until we get more cards to make it more justifiable, right? I just feel like the deck is decent, but it's just not got where it needs to be playable. And I'm definitely gonna put it above the Croc. Like, I think it's better than the Croc by a mile. Okay, next we have the Red Purple Kid. Now, Red Purple Kid in 4.5, I think was great. I was testing him at locals. You guys probably saw the gameplay videos. I really enjoyed playing it, and the only deck it really lost to was Smoker because it just removed your characters from the board. But do I think this deck is insanely good going into OP05? No, I actually think it gets worse. And there is reasons behind this. One, you're still playing a 4K leader. Like, you gotta take the first 2 life no matter what to get to the 5K power so you can actually start doing stuff. And as the format goes forward, we are going into faster and faster formats, so I can't really justify this deck being super high. Do I think it's gonna be insane? No. Do I think it's gonna be decent? Yes, it's a very decent leader. I feel like the end game ability is very strong. Early game, not great, but late game, really, really nice. Where do I feel like it would place, though? I'd probably say in the C tiers, because I think he does have a lot of potential. Like, playing him myself, I can say I really do think he's decent. I think he can do a lot in comparison to other decks, and being able to have good Don management, to be able to trigger, like, heat and stuff, to just go ahead and get that free Don, is really nice when you have especially the 5-cost kid on the board, which gives you active Don back, meaning you get more things to swing with as well, and more Don to, you know, manage in other areas. So I think he's a very decent leader. I do like him, but I don't think he goes above C right now. He just doesn't, in my opinion. Next we have Smoker. I'm going to be honest, instant B tier. Like, instant B tier. I don't know where I'll place him though, probably above Dofi. Like, with all the black support that we're getting with like the Lucci and the Rebecca and all of this other stuff that is just really, really strong, Smoker just gets more powerful, and it's essentially a slightly weaker version than Sakazuki, the blue-black one, and I personally feel like he's still the best rogue deck in the game, so I'm going to justifiably put him in blue, well, in B tier, because he just does a lot. He does a lot. He's great removal. If you put him in the hands of actually decent player, he's going to do really, really well, and I just generally always think he's the best rogue deck. He's the thing that I mainly lose to when I play weird stuff, and yeah, he's just very decent, and he can top events very easily as well, being able to top multiple events in the last format too, so definitely think he's a good one. Next we have Porkchus D Ace. Now, Ace is an interesting one in my opinion as well. Yes, he's a red leader. Red leaders are strong. Ace, though, is not the best red leader. There are way better red leaders out there, and I personally don't think he's absolutely insane. So I'm going to go ahead and justifiably put him into the C tier because, yeah, he's got a good ability where he can just make every card in your hand essentially have counter. But at the same time, like, there's just way better red leaders, there's way better cards to play, and justifiably, he is the worst red leader. Like, well, pure red leader, I should say, because Garp is the worst red leader, if we're talking about that. But, yeah, I think he's a C tier leader. Not really bad, still playable to an extent, but not amazing. So, C tier in my opinion. Next, we have Kuro, D tier. He's a worse Captain Kid, guys. He is a worse green kid. You have to rest 2 characters, taking away 2 swings to go ahead and swing again. And yes, he rests a character, which is pretty decent, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to block with the blocker that they're going to have anyway. So, Kuro, in my opinion, just D tier leader. He's not great. He's just not, in my opinion. Arlong. Now, Arlong in OP06 might be really good. Arlong in OP05... yeah, he's another D tier. He's a worse Dofi. You have to have the cards in hand to go ahead and play him, and honestly, just having to waste hand advantage to begin with isn't good, especially when the blue Dofi uses the top of your deck. Arlong uses your hand. Hand advantage is very important in One Piece because it allows you to counter out of your opponent's big swings, and without that hand advantage, you're not going to do very well. So Arlong is just not great. Yes, having the yellow ability is always going to be decent, but it's just not good enough at times. So he is a D tier leader. Next we have Nami. Nami is solitaire, Nami is decent, Nami is B. Like, no matter what format I think we play, as long as you go against a slower deck, or you go up against decks that generally just can't hit you constantly, Nami's gonna be good. Like, she's essentially the only instant win con in the game where if you hit 0 cards in deck, you win the game. And personally, yeah, I just think she's a very good leader. I think she's B tier, probably bottom B tier, because a solitaire is solitaire. You can very easily lose, especially if you're up against an aggressive deck. So I don't think she deserves to be higher than probably the lowest spot in B tier. There might be one other deck that is lower than her, but I think B tier is justifiable just because deck out, win, very good, nice there. Next we have Iceberg, another F tier. Man said, like, Rebecca and Vivi exists, but Iceberg is a purple leader with 5 life that can't attack and next on to play characters. Rebecca and Vivi get you advantage and can't attack. I personally just think Iceberg is the worst, and it's even like locked majority of the time because you can only go ahead and play out 5 cost or higher Galley Law Company cards, so, or Water 7 cards, so I just generally don't think he's a great leader. Like, he just isn't good. Next we have Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci is probably a C tier leader as well. He does sadly lose a lot of advantage going forward because stuff like the purple law exists where if you have the 7 cards in hand, you're not going to have 2 cards later on to discard to use this ability, which is very unfortunate. And he doesn't really do a lot outside of that, which stuff like Smoker and Sakazuki already do. So I feel like Rob Lucci is just a C tier leader. He's a decent black leader that can do other things and can swing multiple times, but he doesn't do a lot outside of that. I would still say the Navy Lucci leader is still, leader deck is still very decent, but him himself, nah, wouldn't personally play him right now. Think he's okay, but don't think he's amazing. Next, we have Black Yellow Big Mom. This is another decent leader. I'll put her in C tier as well. Being a leader that can just gain life back is always good. Yes, you have to trash a card to use this ability and use 2 Don while swinging with her, but she's got the ability to use the 10 drop Big Mom, which is very, very strong, and have access to all the black removal as well. Do I think she's absolutely insane? No, I don't think she's higher than C tier because there are just way better decks out there than her, but I think she's pretty decent. I think she's okay, so we'll go ahead and put her in C tier there. Next, we have Charlotte Katakuri. I don't think I have to debate when I say this is another A tier leader. Like, Katakuri is Katakuri. It doesn't lose any power going into OP05. You still have all of the yellow cards that you do have. You even get boosts with the new Skypiea cards, having the new 2k counter, and the character that says on play, kill a character your opponent controls with equal or less than their current life. I can't remember his name. It's the one, it's the Mud Man, the Mud Cloud guy. I cannot remember his name, I do apologize. But the deck just gets stronger from here on out and is definitely very, very strong still. So A tier, guaranteed for that. Odin, F tier. This deck is terrible, guys. Like, Odin has never been a good deck in any way, shape, or form. Like, let's be honest, having to discard a Land of 1/0 card to restand 2 Dom, yeah, that's justifiable, I guess, but overall, the Land of 1/0 cards to begin with are not amazing. Like, we haven't got a ton of really, really strong ones, and Odin himself, there's just, like, green is just the worst color in general right now. Like, it literally is the worst color, so it's very hard to say it. And Kinemon is even just the better Land of 1/0 leader. So yeah, I just feel like he's an F tier leader. He was very bad in OP1 and never has been decent even. Like, he's just never been playable really, and it's just very unfortunate, to be honest. Next, we have the Green Purple Dofi. Personally, I feel like Green Purple Dofi is still a very strong leader going forward. Film Dofi is great. You have access into the 10 drop Dofi as well, which is another really good card. You've got access to Sugar, which is another really good card. And you still have access into all the film cards to go ahead and get that consistency that you had in OP04. And even in OP04, before the banning of red, the deck was still performing decently, being able to win some events and still being able to top majority of events very, very easily. So I think the deck is still really good, very decent, definitely can do a lot going forward still. And with more support such as the Baby 5 Searcher coming out too, the deck has potential to go other places. So yep, I think the deck is still decent, definitely an A tier leader in my personal opinion still. Could possibly be bumped down to B tier, but I think it's A tier justifiably. Next we have Black Isho. Honestly guys, this deck is really cool. I really do like the way people play it with the 8-drop Kid and the blockers and all of that. Do I think it's insane though? No, I'm going to justifiably put it in a C tier spot. Probably it's above Lucci. Like, I would say this leader is still decent. I would say it's still interesting, but it's not amazing. And yes, it does get a buff with the Doflamingo Searcher Baby 5, being able to search more cards, get the 10-drop Dofi very easily, have access to searching the the Doflamingo blocker that can restand itself. Like, you get a lot of stuff going forward into OP05 with this leader to potentially play, but I don't think it's still higher than C tier. It's just a fun leader to play, and he's just pretty decent. Like, he's not insane, decent in my opinion. Next, Red Green Law. A tier. Like, yes, this deck loses hard to Black Lucci and Fire Fist still, but I'm not gonna lie, This deck is still the same as it ever was before. It's still the OP02 list. Now you can run some other cards from like other sets, which does make it slightly better, but it's still super consistent. Cheating out characters is great. Hand advantage is huge in this deck, and I personally don't think it deserves to be lower than A tier. Like, the deck is still really strong. It gets its Nami and Dan's back, and yeah, I just honestly think it's still going to be a very, very strong deck going into OP05. And if you play against Sakazuki, you will most likely lose because of the Rob Lucci loop is annoying, but it's still very, very good and insanely strong going forward. So yeah. Next, we have Red Purple Lore. Now, Red Purple Lore, in my opinion, not a good leader. I personally don't like him. I feel like his late game is incredibly bad, and he has a good early game where he can just rush down your opponent, but it's just so hard to get this deck right, and you have to draw very specific cards to make it good, that in my opinion, I just don't think it's absolutely insane. But it does do really, really well in OP05, getting access into all of the new purple cards, getting access into more decreased cards to go ahead and remove higher power characters, but I just don't think it's going to be absolutely insane, so I'm going to justify it in a B tier slot. Upper B for sure, because it could very easily jump into A tier depending on how it's played, depending on what people do with it. But I just really don't like the late game with the deck. I feel like the late game is very, very weak, and the early game is great, but it's just a very weak late game, which is what really makes me put it in B tier. Okay, so next we have the Film Uta. Another terrible leader. Let's move on. Like, it's just not great. The leader is absolutely awful, so it shouldn't be on this list. Next we have Blurple Kaido. Blurple Kaido is another interesting leader. I'm going to go ahead and put it into C tier, just because having the Who's Who to search Onigashima is very, very nice. Having Onigashima to begin with is also very, very nice. And having access into all the purple and blue cards is also very nice. Like, purple and blue is a very interesting color combination, and I think it does deserve some praise, but I don't think it's absolutely insane and should probably be in C tier going forward. Next, we have the Blue Yellow Queen. I think we can all agree this is at least a B tier leader. I'm gonna say probably here. Being a deck that can just gain infinite life, essentially, being a, well, one of my maximum times I've had to take life from someone is probably like 15 because of this leader existence. And this deck is just really, really strong, playing very high costed characters, playing tons of blockers, like just having tons of protection and constantly gaining life. Like, this deck's still going to be good in OP05, so I think it's justifiable B as well. Next we have Black Blue Rebecca. Bottom of B tier. Like, I think this deck is still going to be decent. Sadly, it does get overshadowed by Sakazuki, but getting access into the new cards, which is obviously Rob Lucci as well, having access to the new Rebecca, having access to Manchuri to recycle your trash, like, the deck is still pretty decent, but I feel like with all the red coming back, which this deck have a very good matchup against, is gonna give it a bit of a boom and make it still pretty decent. But I feel like it's just a lot of decks out there that still can counter very easily, which is why I essentially say it does deserve to be in B tier. So it goes in B tier. I think it's still decent. I don't think it's insane. It could very easily drop into C tier, so I would put it in the bottom of B tier. I think it's still decent, but it's just not insane. Red Green Luffy. Sadly, this is a D tier leader. It's playable, it's got a decent color combination, red-green is something that does work, and being able to restand your supernova character is good, but let's be honest, we haven't had any supernova characters in the longest time, and there's no real justifiable reason to play this leader when red-green lore exists, so I'm going to say it's a D tier leader. It just isn't worth playing, so it goes there. Next we have the Red Luffy. This is probably a C tier leader as well, upper C I'd say. Being a leader that can attack into the 6k leaders is very, very nice for free. Having Don management is nice, and I feel like the deck having all the red stuff back is just going to make it pretty decent still. So being able to play like the Strawbeard variant where you play him, obviously Straw Hat, and then all the Whitebeard cards with this deck is still going to be kind of cool. So yeah, it's still a decent leader. I don't think it's an insane leader. I think C is justifiable for this leader as well. Then we have the Green Kid. Green Kid is probably just above Kinemon in B tier. Let's be honest, Film Kid is still a very, very strong deck, still topping events, still doing very, very well, and being able to attack twice with your leader on like 13k, just for a card in your hand, is like absolutely insane. So I'm going to justify this in B tier. Film Kid will always be a decent deck in my mind, so it goes in B. Like, I just justify it there. Next we have Blue Croc. Blue Croc is another very decent leader, which is Rogue. I'm going to put him below Smoker because he's just a very good late game leader, and he's a very good early game leader. You stack your deck with Peronas and Doflamingos, you get to use the Pacifista engine with Sentomaru to go ahead and get free 6k bodies on the board or blockers, and in the late game you're just going to go ahead and drop the 10-drop Kaido and then put 2 cards back in your opponent's hand, and then you're going to neg 4 Don to go ahead and put another card in your opponent's hand from the field. Like, it's just a very, very good removal deck that has a very good engine inside of it, that I think he's a justifiable B tier leader as one of the very good rogue decks. In my opinion, just below Smoker, but very, very strong nonetheless. Next, we have Purple Kaido. Purple Kaido, I'm going to rate him on the same level as Magellan, probably just above him. Reasoning behind this is, as I said earlier, Onigashima is a very, very strong card, being able to ramp every single turn. Kaido can go ahead and neg 7 Don to go ahead and take your opponent's life. You have access into all the new purple cards, such as the 5-cost Kid, which is absolutely insane, giving you more Don access, meaning if you use this card's ability, you're essentially going to be using it for 6 Don instead of 7 Don. And with Onigashima, puts you instantly back up to 5, meaning on the next turn, you can do it again if you really wanted to. I think he's still going to be a very, very decent leader, and B tier is where I justifiably put him right now. So yeah, B tier for Kaido in my opinion. Next we have Purple Shanks, F tier. This leader isn't good, so he goes into F tier. Sakazuki, F tier. This is a terrible leader, should never have been printed, and should have probably killed a 1 cost at least. Next we have Yellow Linlin. Yellow Linlin, I think she's decent. I think she's cool. Like, she has very interesting plays with, like, homies. She's obviously got access to the 10-drop Big Mom as well. She has the ability to manipulate your life with your hand. I think she's decent. I'm going to generally put her next to the black-yellow Big Mom, though. I don't think she's super powerful, so I don't really justify her being higher than C tier right now. Yes, she was able to top some events back in the day, but right now I don't think she's great, so C tier in my opinion. Next we have Black Luffy. Black Luffy is another very decent leader. I'm going to go ahead and put him next to Lucci because, yes, he was very, very good in, like, OP04, like this starting area where we had the Whitebeard deck being very strong and this being a very decent counter to it. Was very, very nice, right? So I feel like this is still a very decent leader, especially with the Navy package. Like, any black deck that plays the Navy package is going to be decent just because the Navy cards are just that good. And Luffy being a leader that just gets a Don whenever a character opponent controls is killed is very, very good. So I feel like C tier is a decent place to put it. He could easily bump into B tier. Like, that's why I look at C tier. C tier are decks that could pretty easily, if something shifts in the meta, bump into B tier, and then B tier decks could easily swap with an A tier deck. That's how I look at it when it comes to lists like this, but I feel like C tier is the justifiable point for him right now, so we put him there. Next we have Yellow Yamato. Yellow Yamato is another C tier deck, I think, in my opinion. It's just a decent yellow deck. I don't think I would put him super high though, because she's just not great. Like, she doesn't have access to the 10-drop. She just basically plays the Big Mom package to begin with. I would probably say she's around... I'm gonna place her next to Black Luffy. I think she's decent, I think she's cool, but I think there's just better yellow leaders such as Katakuri in the board that do a lot better than her. I think, like, the yellow leaders are strong, but the best ones are the Big Mom Pirate ones, and Katakuri is just the best one out of all of them. Like, she's a 6k leader technically, but isn't really. So I feel like C tier, justifiable place for her right now. Vivi, D tier. She's not unplayable. Giving characters rush is very, very nice, and she does go ahead and draw cards every turn. Plus, the blue and red combination is actually a decent combination of colors, but personally, just not a great leader. Very weak in terms of what it does, very weak in terms of what it can play. And yes, technically, you could be dropping like 8-cost characters and then going ahead and swinging with them for like 2 Don and drawing a card on top of that. But I don't think she's insane. I think D tier is just justifiable for her. Next, we have Zoro. Yeah, you and your crayons, you're an A tier. Like, come on, man. Like, how is this leader still around to this day? Zoro, I feel like, is just always going to be one of those leaders that is great always playable. It's going to get killed by Sakazuki still, which makes me happy because I'm getting killed by it with red and green Law. Zoro players can get killed with it by that. It wasn't very great in 4.5 because it did lose all of the good red cards, but it does get everything back just like Whitebeard, so I feel like the deck is just very, very strong going forward, and it's still going to be a very nice deck to play if you want to play this leader. So, yep, definitely an A tier leader in my opinion, playing all the Weenie Hut Jr. cards, searching tons of cards, keeping your hand advantage high. Very, very decent. Next, we have the Red Purple Luffy. Now, Red Purple Luffy is, in my opinion, is another A tier leader. He is going to be very, very strong, 6k leader with the purple cards, being able to access the 7-drop Kid, the 9-drop Kaido, having access into all of the new OP05 cards with the 5-drop Kid is just very, very good. And personally, I feel like A tier is just justifiable. You get the 4 Whitebeard back, you got the 4 Marco, you could play either the purple variant that ramps very, very fast, which this deck already technically does if you don't do that as well, being able to play Gene Bart and Basil Hawkins and all of these other ramp cards, Missile Sunday, and you also have access into all the red pool with the 9-drop Whitebeards, as I said, which is just going to boost this character even higher with your 7-drop Kids. So deck is pretty decent in my opinion. And now we have a new leader that came out in the sealed battle that hasn't actually seen much play to my knowledge, and that is the Blue Luffy leader. Now, Blue Luffy is actually a kind of cool one. If it has 1 Don on it, when attacking, you go ahead and draw a card if you have 3 or less cards in your hand. So it's essentially a better Ivankov, where you don't wait till the end of your turn to use its ability. So I personally do rate that a bit. Do I think the leader is going to be broken though? No. I personally think it's going to be a very decent leader. It's going to be okay to play, and I would put this leader, in my opinion, in C tier. Do I know where in C tier? Probably... You know what? I'm just going to do it for the giggles. Put it next to the red Luffy, because blue is still a very good color. It's got 3,000 worlds, it's got red rock, it's got the 10-drop Kaido, it's got all the removal in the game that you could possibly want. Putting it all to the bottom as well, so avoiding that protection from KO that black has. So C tier, pretty decent in my opinion. I think he's okay. I don't think he's amazing, but okay. That's what my opinion on him. Next we have Yellow Enel, B tier. I think Enel is probably one of the best yellow leaders that we have seen, being essentially a better queen, where if you take your last life, you can go ahead and put a life from the top of your deck into your life pool once per turn. Like, during your opponent's turn, of course. That is absolutely insane. And the fact that you don't need to use the cost of this effect, where the ability, you discard a card to be able to use that ability, but if you trigger a card and you have no other cards in hand, and you can just use this ability for free. So essentially, you take your life, you trigger the card in your hand, you have no cards, okay, I'm still going to get the top card in my deck into my life and still be free. Like, it's generally a really, really strong leader. Another infinite life resource leader like Queen, and I just feel like it's going to do very, very well. Even though it has 4 life for a single color, infinite life, man, those decks are always annoying, and this one is going to be even more annoying, especially seeing as life gaining yellow is already big. So if you do go to 0 life, then you're just going to be able to play a card like the 9-drop Yamato to essentially mean that your opponent needs to swing at you 3 times to get that KO, right? So it's just a very, very strong leader, and I think it's still going to be decent. Don't think it goes into A, don't get me wrong, but it's a very, very strong B tier in my opinion. Next we have Bello Betty. Bello Betty has the exact same reason Red Purple Law is on B tier, and it's that it's got a great early game, but it's got a terrible late game. Like, honestly, this deck is pretty cool. It's got access to yellow, so it has all the triggers. All of the red revolutionary cards have trigger play this card as well, which is very, very nice. But honestly, as I just said, terrible late game, great early game. Like, she's able to go ahead and decrease trigger characters in Revolutionary Army by 3k power by discarding a card, and that is really cool. But again, late game is just terrible, and I'm going to put her in B tier. I think she's just slightly better than Red Purple Law, because unlike Red Purple Law, when she hits 10 Dom, she has 10 Dom. Law, you're negging 3 Don every single turn, whereas she does not do that. So I personally think she's slightly better than the Red Purple Law deck. Definitely has good access with the yellow cards, and also A lot of the revolutionary cards also have access to just cheat out other cards or decrease opponent's cost as well, with Arisu being the first card to go ahead and decrease the opponent's leader's power. So she's got interesting cards, she's got interesting techs in her, and in my opinion, she's got a great early game, but a very, very bad late game. So yeah, B tier leader could possibly jump into A tier at some point, but right now, I'm going to say B tier. Carrying on though, next we have the red-black Sabo. F tier. As I said with Garp earlier on in the video, like, this is the worst color combination. Like, he has a pretty interesting ability where if he has one Don and one of your characters will be KO'd, you can decrease that character's power by 1000 to protect it once per turn. So essentially, you got protection for any characters. It's kind of like a blocker, but your opponent's just probably going to swing into the character again, and seeing as you don't even have access to like a good combination of colors, it really does just not do it justice. Like, if this deck was probably, I don't know, possibly like black blue like Sakazuki, or maybe black purple, I could kind of see this deck being good, but because it's not, it just doesn't have the oomph it needs to be great, and in my opinion, it's just an F tier leader. It doesn't do a lot. In my opinion, it's just not great, and yeah, it's got a decent protection effect, but outside of that, it's just kind of trash. It just doesn't do a lot in my mind. Next, we though have Corazon, and Corazon, guys, I'm going to be honest, Corazon, not the worst leader in the game. He's a C tier. Is he a good C tier? Nah, he's on the lower end of C tier. But he is a very cool leader, being the first leader to have blocker in its text, and also having access to the Don Quixote name. Now, this means that this deck can essentially abuse blue and green. This is the better blue-green deck when it comes to Sanji. This deck has access into Sugar, it has access into all the good blue cards, it has access to all the Dokahente family cards. Like, generally, this is just a great card, being able to abuse the 8-drop kid even better now, because if your opponent does do a giant swing and you're like, oh, I'm on 2 life, I can just block with my leader. It's like, it does have a lot of utility where it can be decent, so I feel like it going into C tier is pretty decent. It's a cool leader, cool premise, and if you play it right, it can actually do a lot of things well. Like, some of these leaders, you just can't justify them being good, but this one, I feel like this has some plays going forward that could really be just great. And I like the fact that he's just blue-green, and I feel like that is a really decent color combination, especially with a good ability already on him, being where if you have 5 or less cards in hand, he does restand, so you can go ahead and swing with him as well, while also keeping him as a blocker, which I really, really do respect Bandai doing, because having a blocker leader that you swing with and then doesn't restand, it's just kind of bad when you think about it, right? So, continuing on though, next we have the Purple Luffy deck, and honestly guys, Purple Luffy, S tier. This deck, oh my god guys, like, generally, being a deck that can ramp itself so quickly with its leader's ability, just by taking life, is absolutely insane. By turn 3, you're normally going to be able to drop the 9-drop Kaido, having a 10-drop body already on the board before your opponent's even on 6 Don. Having the ability to just go ahead and rush down your opponent with all the new purple cards, having the ability to abuse all the new purple cards is really, really strong. And Purple Luffy is just, it's just so fast. Like, it's the quickest purple deck in the game. And when I say the format is getting faster, this is one of the reasons I say it's getting faster, because its ramp is just insanely fast. Like, you take a life, you get to go ahead and get a Don active, and then you can go ahead and use that Don for whatever you need. And also, you're essentially doing what Whitebeard does and drawing an extra card each turn to potentially use to kill your opponent quicker, right? So he's a card that draws 2 cards per turn. He also has the ability to ramp, which is very, very strong. And then you have access to all the huge purple cards, which is just really, really strong. So in my opinion, this deck, great, powerful, very, very good going forward, and it's definitely, in my opinion, a S tier leader. Like, honestly, it could drop into A tier, but I honestly think it's S tier, and I definitely do think it deserves to be there. And then the final leader on our tier list, Black Blue Sakazuki. Now, I don't think I need to justify this to anyone. Top of the list. He is the top S tier leader, guys. Like, Sakazuki is literally the best color combination for removal. He has built-in draw power, being able to trash a card that doesn't have power in your hand, or just any card in general, to draw another card from your deck, so he hand fixes himself. And when he attacks, he has the ability to go ahead and decrease an opponent's character's cost by 1. So essentially, you get all the removal that blue has, all the removal that black has, the ability to decrease characters, the ability to fix your hand by getting rid of cards that don't have counter, won't be usable, and just aren't great in general. Then you get access to all the new black cards, such as the 4-drop Roblucci, the 4-drop Rebecca Blocker. You get access to decrease cards, such as 4-drop Kuzan, the 3-drop Hina to go ahead and decrease by 4 cost. Like, you get access into so much with this deck, having the best removal in the game, having the best way to decrease cost in the game, having access to tons of blockers, that honestly, this deck is 100%, in my opinion, the best deck in the game. Like, the only reason Purple Luffy shares a spot with it is because Purple Luffy is one of the better counters to Sakazuki, because it just rushes Sakazuki down before they can actually play the game. Before they can get to a point where they can get to the high costing Don, where they can go ahead and get protection on the board. So you're just going to keep abusing the Sakazuki player with the Purple Luffy deck. And honestly, Sakazuki's biggest weakness is actually if you can kill them fast enough. This deck has a very weak matchup against decks that will rush you down constantly every single turn and don't have ways to remove them, and Purple Luffy has that, where you're going to be playing like the 9-drop Kaido, which is going to be very hard for the deck to remove, and you're also going to be playing high costing characters that will be very annoying for Sakazuki to remove. So that's why I think it shares a spot with Sakazuki. Sakazuki is just insane with the best remover, as I said. Has access to the 7-drop Borsalina, removing 4 coastal lows to the bottom of the deck. Has access to 3000 Worlds, Red Rock, Black Lucci, Kobe, 6-drop Sakazuki. Like, it just has access to all of this, and being able to fix your hand on top of that by trashing a card to draw a new card, it just really is that good in my opinion, guys. So yeah, Sakazuki in my opinion is the best deck of the format. But guys, this is my tier list. Like, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on what do you think of it. Do you think my tier list is good? Do you think my tier list is bad? Do you think it's got some changes that it needs to be done? Like, maybe you think Queen deserves to be in C tier. Maybe you think something like the blue Luffy deserves to be higher, maybe in B tier. Maybe you think the green purple Dofi deserves to be in C tier for some reason. I don't know what your personal thoughts and opinions are, guys, but I'd love to hear them in the comments section below with your ideas and thoughts on where certain cards need to be and where leaders deserve to go. But anyway, guys, this is just my personal opinion on what I think the format is going to look like. I feel like with Red's return, a lot of the red decks just go back to power, but Sakazuki being the deck that will remove all the low costing characters will keep them in check and mean that they are going to stay in the A tier and not enter S tier. But anyway, guys, that's just my thoughts and opinions. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, tell me your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Absolute Duelist signing out. Later all.